When you start magic, you're always learning new tricks. And then we always want to add these new tricks to our repertoires. But how often should you do this? Let's see what the pros think about this. How often do you add new material in your show?
Not very often. It takes me forever to put new material in. For example, the Chinese sticks that I do, the pom-pom sticks, I bought them and carried them around for 2 years before I had the idea. Likewise with the Hindu thread, it took me about 2 years before I put anything into the show. So I haven't put anything new into the show for years, but I have spent a long time really working on every word. I went to see Bob Fitch for 4 days in Canada, and we went through every word. So every word in my show has been thought about and really worked on. But I don't put I'd like to put new material in, but it takes me a long time to get it right.
Yeah, most professionals I've asked this question to, they're always sticking around with, no, we don't really add much, we just sort of home and just polish our existing acts.
I do like that. I like that the theory of professional changes his audience and an amateur changes his material. And I think in the old days when people were variety acts, they would do the same 6-minute act for years and it was perfect. And I really like the idea of really, really honing that so that you go on and it is bam, it is. The only thing that's going to be different every time is the comedy, because when you get volunteers up, but even then you're going to get your level higher and higher, because each time you do it you're going to listen for the length of time for a laugh, or you're going to get a new line maybe and put that in, but it's tweaking that.
So for me it's the same act, but the way I approach it is that I hope the interaction with the audience is different every single time. So in a sense, the show's different every single time because of what's happening and the improvisations around the interactions.
But you don't actually add new material, like a total different trick?
Probably, maybe I'll add something new once a year, but I also then fall into trouble if I don't take anything out, so the show's just getting longer and longer and longer.
Right.
It's a strange thing. I tend to become a taxi service for new material. It's in the case, and I take it to the show, and then I don't do it, and then I bring it home, and I just kind of act, and that goes on for quite a while, and eventually something will crop up where I'm a few minutes short, and I'll put something in tentatively and think, oh, that kind of worked, and it's a long process for me to put anything new in, but it's usually out of necessity. Then I've just been carrying it around with me for a long time. I practice moves at home, but I think I don't know how things are going to go till they're in the show. So.
New material is something I'm working on all the time. I do have my favourites, but nothing is ever finished. No piece of magic in my show is ever totally signed off. There are things in there that I've done for years. I've done Kevin James's beautiful floating rose routine for 25, 30 years now. I was very fortunate in spending a day with Kevin about 5 years ago, and at that point, having done it for 20 years, or 25 at that point, I thought I knew the trick pretty much inside out. I've had everything go right with it, everything go wrong with it. I've redesigned parts of the workings of it, and sat with Kevin, and I sat and listened to him for hours and realised at that point I was merely a student of that piece, even with all the experience I've had with it. So forever learning with pieces that have been in my show for a long time. But as well as those that I keep working on, like that particular piece, it's important to keep those, for me to keep the creative muscle energized and stretched by adding new materials.
So what's the best way to practice magic?
For me, I like to practice it in the show. So if I've got a new thing, I like to just throw it in the show, see how it sits. I usually work on the rule of 3. So if there's 3 shows have gone by and it just isn't working, I get rid of it.
Well, I tend to practice the moves. I don't do a full rehearsal in costume, and because so much of the comedy is spontaneous, depending on the audience, that I try and find the comedy bits in performance, but I like to know what I'm doing before I get out there. So it's more a practicing of the moves and the handling till I'm familiar with it, and then I'll put it in the case and see what happens.
It's amazing, because after 12 months out, even the muscle memory in your brain kind of, you think, what am I going to do? And you get to the show and you start the show And it's amazing how it all just fires and the gags come back and the lines and the bits of business. And if they don't come back in the first show, I've done a few live ones now, and you think, oh, I missed that bit out. I used to do that really good bit. And I mean, I'm about 6 shows live back into it now, and it's starting to come together. But practice, yeah, I was quite nervous, and there was a little bit of practice before the first show. Definitely after 12 months of not performing, it's yeah, it was good.
So there you go. I hope you learned something from this. I personally think adding new material is really good depending on where you perform. For example, if you're at a residency and they're seeing you all the time, I think it's important to do different tricks. And if you are into the wedding scene or the corporate scene where you're performing for a lot of different people, then there's no point in adding new material, unless you're really bored of your material and you want to add something in. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.